That week, we go to Daytona. Earnhardt gets killed. I go to the care center, me and Patty, right after we heard about his accident. I haul over in a car over to the hospital, and I walk inside. There's Mr. France. There's everybody standing there. And they came out and they announced that he passed away. And I just looked over at Mr. France. He was standing right there. I looked over at him. You know what he did? He looked me right now and he held his hand up like this and he went.
Oh, unbelievable story.
It's the Kenny Wallace Conversation, brought to you by Jegs.
Back in those days, you and Earnhardt were able to battle and get into each other and stay friends. You two had it going on. You two, Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt Sr., you guys were the show. How were you able to stay friends through all that?
We did a lot of things outside of racing. I mean, we would go to a lot of boat trips together. We ended up going down to the Bahamas quite a bit. My wife and Dave's wife, Teresa, were really, really great friends and still are, although we haven't seen her in a long, long time. But I remember I'd go over his farm, took some of the kids over there, and he would teach my kids how to shoot a gun. You know, he'd put them on a sandbag, and we do all this different stuff in this big farm he had. And we did a lot of stuff outside of racing. And that's one of the things that was so upsetting when I'd go, we'd have a lot of fun, maybe in the Bahamas, or maybe we'd go here and have a good time or do the gun thing. But then you get to the racetrack and he'd be so focused on what he was doing. And I'd be so focused on what I'm doing. I was always expecting him to want to hang out more at the track. But he once told me, he said, man, he said, if I'm not focused, you're going to beat me. And I'm like, if I don't focus, you're going to beat me. And so we focused like crazy. And he had his own set of fans, and I had my own set of fans. And we did our own deal. And when that was over, it might be a couple of weeks since I'd seen him, and we'd do something. We'd go have some fun somewhere. We always had a good time. But I tell those boat stories every now and then because that's one thing he was super passionate about. You know, he had his fishing boat. He had his big yacht that he had built. He did all the kind of a lot of stuff. We all loved going down to those Bahamas all the time. And the guy who started all that was Bill France Jr. Back in the day, he used to take some drivers down to the Bahamas and talk rules and try to understand the sport more. He would take General Motors guys, Ford guys, different guys down there, and you know, the tire manufacturers, and talk to them and get ideas. And I was fortunate enough to be invited to every single one of those trips. I think that went on for 18 straight years before it finally ended. After Mr. France passed away, that's when it ended. And so, but yeah, I knew Earnhardt really, really got off the track because of that type of stuff.
You know, it was once said, and I believe it's me that said it, and there have been some other people, that Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Rusty Wallace are the two strongest mentally prepared race car drivers in NASCAR, you know, at that time. What, you know, and as I listen to you right now, you talk about Earnhardt when he went to the racetrack, he had to focus to beat you. I feel like you and him, it was also more talent than driving. Yes, you had talent driving, but I felt like you and him were equally hard-headed. Like you're not going to get me. I'm going to win at everything. Nobody gets me. Would you say that's right?
Well, I always felt that when I went to the track in that era now. In that era, the drivers I was racing on a weekly basis that I had to beat, he was the main one, okay? Mark Martin was really, really good.
Yeah.
Ricky Rudd, really, really good. Guys like that, okay? But he was the one that I felt like if I beat him, I really, really accomplished something.
Yeah.
And they said, what do you think of Earnhardt? I said, well, he's 180 pounds. I'm 180 pounds. He's 6 foot tall. I'm 6 foot tall.
Good stuff.
He's got a 34 waist. I got a 34 waist.
Wow.
We're the same weight. We're the same height. We're the same everything.
Like a boxing match.
He's got a really excited fan base. And I didn't have that. I always had an exciting fan base of mine too. He had more fans than I had. I know that. And he's really super popular. Grew up in the South. I grew up in the Midwest. But you know, we had two people standing side by side. We were both human beings, you know.
Yeah.
And we were both exactly the same size and the same weight and everything.
Both going at it.
Yeah, it's going at it. So it was cool though. I miss him a lot. I miss him a ton because he'd be real influential and he'd be rolling his eyes in a good way and a bad way about things that are going on in the sport. He'd have an opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to call an audible right there. And we do that on the Kenny Conversation. You're going to make me ask another question. Me and you talked before, and we all do this, and you've taught me pretty much everything I know. I'll add Dick Trickle in there, and of course, Dad and our family. But I think between my big brother Rusty, Dad, brother Mike, you said to me, maybe I quit NASCAR. Maybe I retired 2 years too early. Do you feel like when Earnhardt passed away that, that was a bummer and that maybe you said to hell with it? What was your thought there?
Yeah, I mean, it was him passing away was really a tough deal because I'll never forget, there was people already questioning, hey, when are you going to hang it up? You've already accomplished a ton. Do you want to keep on going? And let's face it, my consistency, the amount of races I was winning per year and how I was running was good still, but it wasn't as good as in the past. So it made people question, hey, when are you going to hang this up? Well,
you won 10 races in 1 year in 93, I believe.
10 in 93 was my strongest year. Then the following year in 84, we won 8 races. And so those mid-90s were incredible. And that's the era that I raced with Earnhardt, all through the 90s. And that's the reason I was always so confident around him because I beat him a ton and he beat me a ton, And I never could be as good a speedway racer as he was. He was an incredible Daytona and Talladega racer. I could run with him anywhere else. Talladega and Daytona, he just was magic, And so I wish I could have been that good at those places. That's one thing when I'm all said and done, I wish I could have won the Daytona 500, but I got close many times.
Well, I think, Rusty, I think anybody's like that in life with anything. I've read a lot of stories about it, a lot of great athletes. There's always more, but do you feel like that was one of the reasons? I thought you did the right thing, and I told you that.
Well, it was definitely one of the reasons I retired after seeing him pass away. And then you have people talk to you about how much longer you want to go. And the guy that set me down and did that to me was Bill France Jr. He was in office. He asked me to come to his office one time, and it was about 5 days before Speed Weeks, and I was down there. And I'm big into aviation. He was big into aviation. Mr. France was. So it was we were talking about airplanes and different things like that. And he said, man, so I want to talk about your career. I said, oh, yeah, go ahead. He said, I'm hearing people talking about that you've been asked a lot of questions about when you're going to hang it up. He said, I just want to tell you one thing. He said, you got your health right now. You're healthy. You're looking good. He said, I noticed you're paying a lot of attention to business stuff. And he said, you're not running as good as you used to, but you're still running good. And he said, I remember, he took his hand, he held it up. He said, I remember when your career was like this, man. You were just going up, 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 up. He said, well, now you're kind of like this. You're kind of up on that top of that deal, and you're just teetering back and forth,
Yeah.
And he said, so, I'm not telling you to quit, but I'm telling you this sport can use you in a lot more ways than you just driving that car every single week and going through that with all the rest of them drivers. I said, okay, I'll keep that in mind. That week, we go to Daytona. Earnhardt gets killed. I go to the care center, me and Patty, right after we heard about his accident. I haul over in the car over to the hospital, and I walk inside. There's Mr. France. There's everybody standing there. And they came out and they announced that he passed away. And I just looked over at Mr. France. He was standing right there. I looked over at him. You know what he did? He looked me right now, and he held his hand up like this, and he went.
Oh, unbelievable story. Very daunting.
He said, he just wanted to remind me, I told you don't have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And he looked straight at me and went like that. And I went, I'll be dead. And I'll never forget that long as I live. And so then I thought about it, and then at the same time, I get an offer from the networks. I had an offer from 2 networks to go to work for them. I said, well, you know what? if I don't make this announcement now, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, somebody else would get it. And
But you won in your last year of racing. You went into the playoffs and you ended your career in NASCAR winning.
Actually, I won in 2004 in Martinsville, Virginia. Announced my retirement after that.
Yeah.
And ran the next year in 2005 and made it into the playoffs.
Right.
But I didn't win.
Okay.
But I made it into the playoffs, which is I said, I always wanted to go out on top of my game. And I thought, I had a lot of second place finishes that year, my final year. I led a bunch of laps and I made it to the chase for the championship. So in my heart, I went out on top like that. There's a lot of drivers, they go out with having some really crappy runs for years and finally say it's over, and I didn't want to be that guy.